What I want to share with you today a little bit is a developer's perspective on renewable natural gas projects. And basically, I'm going to give you some practical insight saying it really is a numbers game. We've heard a lot about the environmental benefits of these projects. We've heard a lot about why people would like to do them, but the question is, how do you do them? Everything old is new again, and this goes back to when we founded our company. We partnered with an affiliate of the Southern California Gas Company, and this goes back into the mid-1980s. In mid-1980s, we were dual fueling vehicles with biomethane from both wastewater treatment plants and from landfills. So the concept itself is not new. This particular venture, though, was not successful, and the reason basically was economics. At that time, we had $10 a barrel oil, and we had probably less than $2 a million BTU gas, and the economic differential between those two did not get people excited enough to change their customary habits of buying gasoline and switching to CNG. This, again, is a 25-year-old slide actually made by Central Plants, which was the affiliate for Southern California Gas, talking about the concepts of taking raw landfill gas from a landfill. They cleaned it up with a gas processing technology called Binax, and then putting it to a higher use. This was their concept, again, going back 25 years, processing gas, putting it into a gas pipeline used as a distribution source, and delivering it to various sources for end uses, including vehicle transportation. This is a slide that basically talks about the two major sources at that time, wastewater treatment plants and landfills, and going through a gas cleanup technology. And on the right, you see the 3 or 4 predominant end uses that compete for renewable natural gas. So again, this is not a new concept. This goes back 25 years, but perhaps the time now is right for this concept. I happen to be one of those who believes that that's the case. This is a picture of the McComas Bluff landfill. Many of you went on the tour and viewed the Rumpke landfill. This is actually the sister plant using the identical technology at Rumpke that exists at the McComas Bluff landfill. This is in Dallas, Texas. This is, again, one of the larger landfills in the country. It is probably a 100-year gas resource based upon the open life of the landfill and how long gas will be produced following the closure of the landfill. Just to give you an idea of capital, we are in the process of going through a 50% expansion of the inlet gas processing capacity of this plant. It currently accepts 9.4 million standard cubic feet a day of landfill gas. We're going to increase that by 50%, and there will be more than $50 million of capital invested in this plant. So this is not a hobby project. Our partner in this project is Clean Energy, who many of you know from the CNG fueling stations. We have successfully structured this, and one of the keys to this is not the technical engineering, because one of the things I should bring up is this plant had gone through 2 prior bankruptcies before our acquisition. And it didn't have to do with the technical engineering. It had to do with the lack of financial engineering. And you're going to see my keys to success for financial engineering in a moment. But this was a plant that was operating on a merchant basis. It was not able to meet its expenses, and I say 2 times prior to our acquisition of this with Clean Energy has gone into bankruptcy. Probably the most significant development aspect that we did in this project was to sign a 15-year long-term agreement with Shell Energy at double-digit prices for natural gas per million BTU, and that gives you some perspective in terms of what natural gas is selling for today. So I have a credit-worthy, financeable off-take purchaser for this project. And that has allowed us to go through what we're in the process of doing right now, refinancing with some very low-cost debt, which is supported by that long-term energy agreement. Next project I'm going to show you is a much smaller project, but also a very successful project at the Fort Smith landfill in Arkansas. This is probably a third the size of the existing plant that we have at McComas Bluff. Maybe the smallest landfill gas to pipeline gas project in the United States. We're partnered with a company called Southex Treaters, which comes out of the natural gas treatment business. This is different technology. The technology I showed you that you toured yesterday at Rumpke was pressure swing absorption, temperature swing absorption technology. This is select salt technology. Most of these projects, there are a lot of technologies that are working very well. You heard about the Acreon technology, the Air Liquide membrane technology, which is fronted by PSA Technologies. All of them work well to upgrade basically the gas, landfill gas that comes out of the landfill to pipeline quality standards. And that's the key part from a financing perspective is can you upgrade it to meet the pipeline's requirements? That's key. I won't go through a lot of this other than to note the types of projects you saw earlier, but I do want to highlight that there are not a whole lot of these projects around. In the landfill gas industry, which is probably the largest resource of its type in the country, there are only roughly 24 operating projects today. That's out of the 519 or so that you heard mentioned earlier that are operating. We have done a lot of other projects using other technologies, a lot of electric power, a lot of direct use displacement. We've done cogeneration. We have even tried LNG, which didn't work successfully because of the scaling issues. And my hat's off to Chuck White and Waste Management and Lindy for the job they're doing with that. Difficult problem statement. So in terms of the types of capital we need to extend, and I'm going to focus a little bit on the financing engineering because my experience is the largest reason these projects fail is not because of the technical engineering, it's the financial engineering. Here's the cheapest capital you can get, free money. Sign me up for that all day long. Difficult to get. It is, as you'll see later, a role that the Clean Energies program, I think, can play in this. Tax credits. Now, unfortunately, in the biogas business, as opposed to the landfill gas or digester gas to electric power business, this has been taken away. There used to be a Section 29 tax credit, which gave a tax credit for a non-renewable fuel, and that was utilized in all types of projects. Today, the Section 45 tax credit, which was what's available for the wind industry, only pertains to electric power. So these projects are actually at an economic disadvantage when compared to electric power projects. Now you heard Kelsey from the research office earlier mention that there are two bills pending, HR 1158, there's a companion Senate bill 306, which would actually provide a $4.27 per million BTU tax credit. That would be very welcome were that to pass. That is not law today, though, and so right now there's no tax support, at least at the federal level, for these types of projects. Debt, always cheaper than equity, hard to find, and you need to have a financeable structure to achieve it. Equity, of course, is the most expensive capital you can get, and sometimes difficult to achieve the kinds of returns required to attract equity for these projects. This is my secret formula. If you take notes on anything in this presentation, this is probably the most valuable piece of information that I can impart, and it's this must be met in all projects. And when I tell people that, I get that response, but that is the single most important reason why most of these projects fail. And it just has to do with you cannot build these projects, in my experience, reliably for the long term, hoping you're going to receive revenues that will exceed your expenses. And so structuring the end sale agreement for an energy sale becomes critical, in my experience, in doing these projects. You have to have a margin by which you exceed it with your return on capital, and then you need predictability of this result. I want to give you, here's the other part of the equation. This slide basically shows typical expenses for what it takes to do a landfill gas to energy project. Just look at the bottom, $5.48 per million BTU. What does natural gas sell for today if you're going into a pipeline? I'll just tell you it's less than that. So that does not meet the secret formula for financing these projects. Therefore, you have to get an increased premium in order to meet that requirement. Basically, we're talking about selling this for pipeline, for transportation purposes on a basis where it has to compete with other markets. Currently, moving this gas to states where there's a renewable portfolio standard, where it's used to produce renewable electric power, $10 to $12 per million BTU. How do you overcome the basic reaction of a fleet customer who says, well, gee, but if I buy just fossil fuel off the pipeline, I can pay $4. That's a challenge. I have a thought that would work on that, and I'll share that with you in a sec. what is it that you as Clean Cities coordinators can do to assist people like myself who you may wish to team with to develop a project? Well, on the revenue side, there is, maybe some local state tax credits. There are the location of customers, and by the way, since you work with cities and, fleets of vehicles are owned by cities, states, the federal government, the post office, etc. Those kinds of fleets are essential to act as, if you will, anchor tenants for these kinds of projects. Promote fueling infrastructure. That's critical. Promote a blended RNG, CNG, and I think that's going to be a key to getting this done. If I need to get a higher price for my RNG fuel, if I blend it only 20%, like they do with ethanol, with CNG, I end up with a blended cost that's a little bit higher than pipeline gas, but I can also hedge for a long period of time my fuel cost because I have the ability to fix that cost in terms of my relationship with the landfill owner. Other things is locating the grants, tax credits for vehicle and fueling infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit and maybe question and answer about that. Low-cost bonds or other debt. And the keys to success, basically finding biomethane with access to markets. Again, question and answer, I'll talk about that. There's a whole series of issues involved with access in terms of meeting pipeline quality standards if you're not doing on-site refueling. Make sure revenues from all sources exceed expenses. As I told you, it's critical. And know your numbers, don't use fuzzy math. And that is really critical. And what do I mean by fuzzy math? Well, you can't engage in something like this.